Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast. Today, we are here to talk about the topic of what is fueling for running and fueling for weight loss have in common. And I wanted to cover this topic today because this is probably the most common question that I get or struggle that I get when I'm on Instagram. I'm talking to runners in my DMs, getting comments on my posts, things like that. The biggest challenge or struggle that comes up again and again and again is runners looking for help with both performance and improving body composition, right? And a lot of people want to know, is this possible? Is this something you can help me with? Is this something that you do? And I think a lot of the confusion or a lot of the struggle comes from the fact that there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of bad information out there around what it means to fuel for fat loss and what it means to fuel as a runner. And they're often seen and presented as these very opposing things. And they almost seem like at opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think for a lot of runners, that's what sort of leads them down the wrong path, is the assumption or sort of being told over time that running for weight loss or fueling for weight loss and fueling for better running or just fueling in general for running are these opposing, conflicting things. And I mean, a lot of runners, you are maybe listening to this, you clicked on this episode, you came to my podcast because you want to know, what does fueling for running and weight loss have in common? And I am here to tell you that it is not impossible. I use these exact strategies with my clients and inside my programs all of the time. That's the Fueled Runner program and the Fuel Train Recover Club, as well as, of course, with my one-on-one clients. People will tell you that it's impossible and that you have to choose. But I am here to tell you that it is absolutely not, because this is exactly what I do every single day. This is my life's work. But what you do need is the right information, the right approach, and a little bit of patience. Because I think the biggest problem is that diet culture and the diet world we live in feeds us this idea that it needs to be quick. In order for it to be effective, it needs to work immediately and dramatically to be worthwhile. And almost like the faster or the more extreme the result up front, the better. And you see it everywhere, right? The magazine covers. I mean, this has been going on for decades, right? The magazine covers, the advertisements, right? How fast somebody was able to lose a certain amount of weight, right? What they did to lose as much weight as they possibly could as quickly as possible. And I get it, right? If you've been struggling with your weight for years and years and years, you want it to just happen. You want the result. You want to know that what you're doing is going to get you the result, right? There's no worse feeling than wasting our time. And so these diets that are specifically designed for quick weight loss. They want to give you that win up front. They want you to see that scale drop really rapidly so that you buy in, that you know you're on the right track. You feel like this is working. The problem, though, is that those results are typically pretty short lived. And if you've done this enough times, if you've done enough diets, if you've been on this roller coaster for a long time, like so many people have, you know that everything works to some degree for some length of time, but the real kind of shift is in the sustainability. And that's where it tends to get a little bit trickier. That's where it starts to get a little bit tougher. So the first thing I want to talk about in today's episode are those big misconceptions that I think are ultimately the problematic things when it comes to nutrition for these different seemingly opposing goals, and why that and that sort of misinformation or misconceptions with these different approaches, that's what's stopping us from getting the results that we want. So the first one is the dieting or eating for fat loss or weight loss, right? The overarching theme, the overarching message here tends to be that we just simply have to eat less and move more, right? And that eating less part of the equation usually is cutting some form of carbohydrates, right? I mean, that's again just the world we live in right now. We're still kind of in this like low carb movement, come and gone over the years. There's been different approaches, but it's cutting carbs first, having this dramatic reduction in calories. And again, it's the dramatic reduction in calories or the dramatic cut in carbs that gives us that initial weight loss up front, right? Like when keto was kind of at its height, like you saw people were losing 10, 15 pounds down in the first week or the first 2 weeks, right? So it's that big initial win up front that it's like, oh my gosh, like imagine if I keep going, what this is going to do for me. That doesn't continue, right? The 10, 15 pounds a week does not typically continue. And if it is, we're not losing just fat, right? We're losing muscle along the way too, which is what I am always working so hard to try and prevent. So it's cutting a lot of carbs, cutting a lot of calories, and almost like a temporary but extreme cutting phase sort of approach. Whether that's, intermittent fasting that we're going down to like 1 or 2 meals a day, or maybe going even longer without eating. There are so many different ways to kind of slice this, lots of different specifics and different trends that have come and gone over the years. But the issue is that we're trying to create a big calorie deficit for quick weight loss, cut a lot of calories for those fast results. Or again, as runners, we're trying to take advantage of the calorie deficit we create while we're running to accelerate the weight loss results. So I'm going to do a bunch of fasted running. I'm going to run as many miles as I can while eating as little as I can, and just try to be in like the biggest deficit possible. And again, like initially, there is usually some results up front, right? I mean, if this didn't ever work for anybody, nobody would try it. Nobody would do it. If no one had ever had success, if nobody ever made it onto a magazine cover or had like a really glamorous social media post before and after, or wrote a book dedicated to the idea, right? If this had never worked, nobody would do it. It's out there working for somebody, and you probably even yourself have had some good experiences initially with these types of weight loss approaches. But what ends up happening? Two things, right? We lose some weight up front, maybe a lot, maybe a little bit, but our running and our performance, our endurance, our strength, our stamina, all of the things goes to absolute garbage, right? We're exhausted. We might get injured. We're hungry. We're slow, right? The ceiling for how long, hard, fast we can train, we can run, we can perform is dropped considerably when we're in that much of a calorie deficit, right? We may not end up reaching our weight loss goal that we wanted to in the first place. We also see that there are significant metabolic adaptations that happen during this time of extreme restriction, right? So yes, we have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. We know that. Like this, yes, the laws of thermodynamics apply. I don't know. Yes, we can talk about, yes, that's a real thing. But we undergo metabolic adaptations when we do this. So staying in a calorie deficit becomes harder over time, right? And I see this a lot, right? People are working so hard to eat less and move more and be in this big calorie deficit, but the scale stops moving, right? It won't budge. And so we stop, right? And then it's easier to gain weight over time and harder to lose it, not because we are in a calorie deficit and it's just not working for us, because that's not a thing. But the problem is that, like, the estimated calorie burn that we should be burning is not what we're actually burning because these metabolic adaptations have taken place. And we get to a point where, like, we can only restrict so much for so long until it just becomes like unsustainable, right? And so we flip-flop. And whether that's on a weekly basis, we have a few low calorie days, a few high calorie days, whether we are really good for a couple of months and then, the floodgates break, whatever it is, right? Yes, if we were consistently in a calorie deficit, a progressive calorie deficit over time, yes, we would continue to lose weight. But the problem is that becomes very unsustainable, very unenjoyable, and harder as time goes on. So I absolutely do not recommend that approach. I think that it's a terrible way to live your life and to lose weight and be happy and enjoy running and enjoy eating. So we have to find another way, right? We have to find a better, more sustainable solution. So all of these approaches that lead us down that path, not great. Don't think that people should wind up there. And I unfortunately encounter a lot of runners who are in that situation and are incredibly frustrated, incredibly confused, are getting all kinds of conflicting messages and information from all different sources. And at the end of the day, it's just too hard to keep going down that path. So today, I'm hoping that I can offer you a better solution and sort of show you what I do to kind of fix this problem that so many runners find themselves in. Okay, so before we get to that, the misconceptions and misinformation about fueling properly for running. And this is also, a little bit funny, and some of the memes that we see online and some of the lightheartedness that we see around eating as a runner. But I think that it also has a bit of a dark side in some of the biases and some of the negativity that I see online with how people think other runners eat. Like, I'll give sort of an example. You kind of see this, go for a long run and then eat everything in the house. Go for a long run and then you're binge eating pizza and French fries, or carb loading with like burgers and chips and ice cream. And this idea that, like, if you're doing a lot of running, you can and should just eat as much of anything you want. And again, like all things, there is somebody out there that this seems to be working fine for, right? Regardless of how much they're running, they don't pay that much attention to their diet. They have a body that objectively people would say is a great body. They're maybe a very talented runner, and they just don't really think that much about their diet. And their diet is, maybe, as my perspective as a dietitian, I would say their diet probably isn't that great quality. But again, it seems to be working fine for them. So you've got people like that are saying, well, I just run a lot, and so that I just eat whatever I want. Or again, the opposite of being seen as, like, runners who are struggling with their weight are struggling because this is what they're doing. And I think it's just, again, like this sort of messy misconception and kind of misinformation that's layered in here. And again, like, just like the extreme dieting and low carb eating and intermittent fasting and all that kind of stuff, like, I don't think that that's great for runners for weight, body composition, performance, any of the things. Also, just running a lot and just like eating whatever, whenever, I also don't think is ideal, right? Because yes, running does burn a lot of calories, right? It does. It's one of the highest calorie exercises that we can do, but it doesn't burn endless calories. And if you have ever looked at calorie information, like if you have ever kind of done the math on how many calories you burn on like a 10-mile run and how easy it is in our modern food environment to eat back those calories plus some, it's a little bit terrifying. Like, how easy it is to no longer be in a calorie deficit like one fast food meal and you're there after like even a 10-mile run, right? And 10 miles is a long run. So if that's sort of the approach is that, oh, I'm running so much that what I eat doesn't matter or shouldn't matter, or I'm not thinking about it because I'm running so much, that's also not a great way of looking at things, right? So yes, it burns calories, running burns calories, but we have to still think about the quality of our nutrition, the timing of our nutrition, and the balance of our nutrition. Because if those things are lacking, then again, we can be working very hard to do a lot of running. And maybe the running is going fine. I would say probably could be optimized again with a proper nutrition approach versus, just again, eating all the ice cream and French fries all the time. But I digress. I think a lot of the issue here in the fact that people feel like these are sort of at odds with each other is just because of misinformation and misconceptions. If we sort of boil it down to the fundamentals and the realities of properly fueling our bodies for running and fat loss, they really have more in common than you would think. They have far more in common than the internet will tell you. And so, what I want to share here today are a couple of my key strategies that I use with my clients, again, either my one on one clients or inside my online programs, to really help them work towards both of these goals at once. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that the extra thing we need is patience. And the reason for that is because when we think about improving body composition, it is little by little over time. I'm talking months to years. So I think the biggest mistake that people make with this is thinking that, like, if I do it properly, if I do it the right way, the way Steph, the dietitian, says that I should be doing it, the challenge is that you still expect, and whether it's like just like an actual expectation, it's kind of a subconscious expectation, you still kind of like think the scale should move really quickly. And it just doesn't, right? Because you could be building muscle at a similar rate to losing body fat, and the net result on the scale would be no change. But you're improving, right? Your underlying body composition is improving, and that's really the key. Okay, so number one, we have to eat the right amount for our training demands. Not too much and not too little. The right amount for us. And that requires us to just be realistic about the amount of training we're doing. Just know, right? How many miles am I running per week? How many minutes am I spending doing activity per week? And just adapting, right? There's no right answer. There's no perfect amount. There's no judgment for doing more or less or anything like that. But just what am I doing? What are my unique training demands? And how do I eat? What do I eat when for that, right? And the reason I'm so passionate about this point is because research shows that the athletes who have the best body composition are eating the closest to their actual energy needs, right? So I want that to just like sink in for a second. The athletes with the best body composition are eating the closest to their actual energy needs. Now, this is not just like in a 24-hour period. The timing of our nutrition also does play a role and also matters. It's not the athletes who are the smallest or are the lightest, right? But the best body composition, which means more muscle, less body fat, which is better overall for performance, right? Because if you have a low number on the scale, but you have very little muscle to speak of, it's better to have more muscle, right? Even if that means that you weigh a little bit more and have a better like strength to weight type of ratio. So we don't need to be in a huge calorie deficit that chips away at our muscle mass over time and leads to these negative metabolic adaptations. We just need to understand our nutrition needs, be realistic about the volume of training that we're doing, and eat the right amount for it. And also know how to adjust that over time as our seasons of training shift. So not just when we're building for a marathon or just when we're in the off season, but how does that adjust and adapt as we go through these different cycles that we go through year over year, right? The second thing is we have to look at the timing of our nutrition and really focus on eating at the right time. So instead of trying to like wake up in the morning, go for a fasted run, burn as many calories as possible, and then like binge eating later in the day. And then maybe going way overboard on our calories because we were just like going crazy with not the right foods, getting the wrong balance of macronutrients too. We want our runs well fueled for better quality training, right? Because better quality training means we have, like, we're burning more calories, right? If we can run longer, hit faster paces, have more stamina and energy, like if we can do more work, we get more benefit. And we also we need that to be well fueled, right? Um, Same goes for strength training. We can lift heavier. We can actually stimulate muscle growth if we're fueling properly for our strength workouts as well. So building fitness, building strength, the training quality matters and fueling matters for our training quality. Recovery nutrition on the other side of it also matters a lot too, right? Not just fueling up before we train, but also emphasizing that recovery nutrition so that our subsequent workouts are good quality as well. So we want an emphasis on the carbs and protein for recovery, not delaying that post-workout nutrition and then just like eating whatever we can grab because we're starving and whatever sort of like easiest and quick, right? So not seeing the running as like a means to just allow us to eat whatever whenever, but really shifting to eat around our training schedule and fuel in a way that supports the demands of our training and supports our recovery so our next training sessions are stronger. And then the third thing is that we want to eat the right foods and get that right balance of nutrients to keep us full and satisfied without being so hungry that we're going overboard on calories, right? And this is where diet quality comes into play. Emphasizing high protein foods, especially those lean protein sources. Emphasizing high fiber foods, right? Those whole grains, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, plant proteins, getting in the foods that give us more fullness, more satisfaction, make it easier to not be starving all the time. Because when we're hungry, we're gonna break, right? When we're starving, we're gonna eat things that we don't need, or, our portion sizes are gonna be too big. We're gonna make bad choices when we're starving, right? If we are well fueled, we're not thinking about food all day long. We're not battling cravings all day long, right? We're not having all of this excess food noise going on if we are going through the day with a proper plan for fueling ourselves well with good quality calories. So on the other side of it, right, we want to eat enough of the right things to keep us full and satisfied and feeling good, right? We also want to be mindful of some of those high calorie extras that can come into play. And that usually is going to be like added sugars, added fats, and alcohol calories. Now, added sugars can be a little bit of a hot topic with running because we definitely want to use those quick sugars, right? Those quick digesting carbohydrates that are typically going to be your added sugars, using them for intra-run fuel, for carb loading, maybe for pre-workout, like as needed. But so they don't need to be avoided entirely, right? We're not trying to completely eliminate, but we don't want to be taking in a lot of added sugars outside of our training that are either adding extra calories to our day or displacing the high protein, high fiber foods, right? Because added sugars are not filling and satisfying. They don't give us nutrients, right? They don't keep us from getting hungry really quickly. So if we're in a calorie deficit and a lot of those foods that we're eating are a lot of like added sugars and stuff like that, we can be super hungry. We can struggle a lot with our appetite and with not feeling full and satisfied of our diet is around protein and fiber, that it makes it easier to be in that small deficit or be very close to meeting our needs for optimal body composition. So those are a couple things to think about, and just the approach that I use to help runners fuel for better, stronger running and also see changes and improvements in body composition that they want to. But I want to wrap it up with a final tip. I kind of touched on this a couple times here, but you have to give yourself enough time to see these results when you're focusing on the right things. Fat loss and weight loss are not the same, right? The scale does not always give that perfect indication of what is going on with body composition behind the scenes. if you can get your body composition actually checked a couple times a year, I think that that's great to like know that you're on the right track. Looking at measurements instead of the scale, because the scale can be very frustrating. I've had clients who have had wonderful improvements to their body composition. The scale shows nothing. The scale shows no change. And they might think that they're on the wrong track. They might think that they're doing the wrong things, but they've got their body composition checked, or they've looked at measurements and seen that, no, actually, the changes that I want are happening. My weight just isn't changing. And that's totally fine. Sometimes it's even the best case scenario. So be prepared for this to be a long game. Be prepared to commit to this being a learning process and a non-linear thing that takes months to years. But when it isn't hard, right? When it doesn't feel like restriction, when it doesn't feel like starvation, when your running feels good, when you see the results happening from good quality training, when you're not exhausted, when you're recovering well, when you have good energy, like when it all fits together and it all clicks, it's not a burden, right? So if right now you're thinking, oh my gosh, Steph, like I cannot imagine having to do this for like months to years. The reality is that you're probably used to very restrictive short-term types of diets that you have to like really buckle down and use a tremendous amount of willpower to get through. And I just want to present the idea that fueling yourself this way should be enjoyable and give you balance and flexibility so that it doesn't feel like a burden or a tremendous amount of work or something that you have to like really, really put yourself through every single day and be constantly like struggling with cravings and all of those kinds of things, right? Because that's not good eating, right? That's not a happy, healthy relationship with food, is to feel like you're always in a struggle and in a battle, right? This should be you working with your body, fueling yourself in a way that is good and feels good and is very sustainable because you're seeing the results that you want to because of it. So, as I mentioned, these are the strategies that I use with my clients every single day, and exactly what we cover inside the Fueled Runner program, as well as the Fuel Train Recover Club. If you want to understand exactly what to eat when to improve your performance and body composition based on your unique training goals and demands, without it just being another fad diet or another different method of starving yourself, everything you need to really unlock that next level of knowledge and understanding and joy around your eating is all here. So you can get the details about the different programs I have at the link in the show notes. And I would love to work with you and love to help you with your nutrition. So that's it for this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and we will see you back here next week. Bye for now. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.